While security froze around the screaming boy, a maid's daughter stepped forward with a simple plastic bottle. She silenced the room with bubbles. Unaware, the desperate billionaire father was watching from above. "Stand back. Give the boy room." The security chief's order only fueled the chaos. On the polished marble floor, 8-year-old Billy wasn't throwing a tantrum. He was fighting a war against the noise inside his head, thrashing to block out the world. His father, billionaire Robert Hayes, stood frozen, a man who controlled empires but couldn't stop his own son's tears. Into this storm walked Jenny, a maid's daughter with worn sneakers. Ignoring the guards, she reached into her backpack for a small, yellow plastic bottle. As the lobby held its breath, she prepared to do what a fortune couldn't. The boy's scream shattered the heavy silence of the hotel lobby like a hammer hitting glass. Everyone in the marble expanse froze. The receptionists stopped typing. The bellhops halted their carts. Even the dust seemed to hang suspended in the air. In the center of the room, a young boy, no older than 8, lay curled on the polished floor. He was thrashing, his hands pressed hard over his ears as if trying to block out the entire world. Around him, 3 men in expensive dark suits stood uselessly. They looked like statues, terrified of making a move. One of them was shouting into a radio, his voice panicked and loud, which only made the boy scream harder. "Stand back," the head of security barked, pushing a curious guest away. "Give the boy room." Linda, wearing her gray housekeeping uniform, gripped the handle of her cart. Her knuckles were white. She had just finished a 10-hour shift cleaning the penthouse suites and was bone-tired. She looked down at her daughter, Jenny, who was sitting quietly on a bench near the employee exit. Jenny was 10 years old. She had blonde hair braided tightly down her back and eyes that noticed everything. She didn't look scared. She looked focused. "Mom," Jenny whispered. "It's too loud for him." "Hush, honey," Linda said, pulling Jenny closer. "Don't look. It's Mr. Hayes' son. We can't get involved. We'll lose our jobs." But Jenny wasn't looking at the security guards or the angry men in suits. She was looking at the boy. She watched his chest heave. She watched his eyes squeeze shut. She saw the way his fingers clawed at the cold stone floor. "He's not being bad," Jenny said, her voice calm and older than her years. "He's drowning." Before Linda could stop her, Jenny stood up. She didn't run. She didn't shout. She walked with a slow, steady rhythm, her worn sneakers making no sound on the marble. She reached into the side pocket of her school backpack. "Hey," a guard shouted, stepping in her path. "Kid, get back. This isn't a playground." Jenny didn't answer. She didn't even look at the guard. She sidestepped him smoothly, a move her grandmother had taught her. "Never let a wall stop you," Grandma Ruth used to say. "Just find the door." Jenny stopped 5 feet from the thrashing boy. She sat down on the floor. She crossed her legs. She didn't try to touch him. She didn't try to talk over his screaming. She just sat there, small and still in her denim jacket and pink t-shirt. From her pocket, she pulled out a small, yellow plastic bottle. She dipped the wand. She took a deep breath. She blew. 1 bubble. Then 2. Then a stream of them, shimmering with rainbows under the lobby chandelier. The bubbles drifted through the air, ignoring the tension, ignoring the shouting men. One landed on the boy's shoe and popped silently. The screaming cut off instantly. It was replaced by a gasp. The boy opened his eyes. He saw another bubble floating past his nose. He stopped rocking. His hands slowly lowered from his ears. The lobby went completely silent, but this time, it wasn't a fearful silence. It was a stunned one. The men in suits stared. The security guard lowered his arm. Linda held her breath by her cart, terrified and amazed. Jenny blew again. More bubbles. They danced in the air currents. The boy sat up. He reached out a trembling hand. He didn't grab. He just watched a bubble land on his finger. "Blue," Jenny whispered. It was the first thing she had said. The boy looked at her. His eyes were wide and dark. "Blue," he whispered back. "Blue is for the sky," Jenny said softly. "It means you have room to breathe." Up on the mezzanine balcony, looking down through the glass railing, a man stood frozen. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Linda made in a year. His face was sharp, handsome, and usually terrifying to his employees. Robert Hayes, the billionaire owner of the Hayes Hotel Group. A man who could negotiate deals with fierce CEOs but froze every time his own son cried. He gripped the railing. He had been about to rush down, to order the doctors, to yell at the security staff. But now he couldn't move. He watched a maid's daughter, a child with scuffed shoes, do what he had failed to do for 5 years. She had stopped the storm. Robert turned to his assistant. "Bring them up," he said. His voice was rough. "The girl. And her mother." "Sir," the assistant stammered. "That's housekeeping staff. We should just send them home and—" "I said bring them up," Robert snapped. "Now." 5 minutes later, the boy, Billy, was calm. A nanny had come to take him to the car, but Billy refused to move until Jenny gave him the small bottle of bubbles. "Keep it," Jenny had said. "It's magic water. It pushes the noise away." Now, Linda and Jenny stood in the center of Robert Hayes's massive office. The walls were glass, overlooking the city skyline. It was beautiful, but it felt cold, like the inside of a refrigerator. Linda was twisting her apron in her hands. "Mr. Hayes, I am so sorry," she began, her voice shaking. "She knows she isn't supposed to bother the guests. She's just a child. Please, I really need this job." Robert didn't speak at first. He stood behind his desk, staring at Jenny. He looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Who taught you that?" Robert asked. He ignored Linda's apology completely. He was looking only at the 10-year-old. Jenny stood tall. She didn't slouch. "Taught me what, sir?" "The bubbles," Robert said. "The counting. The sitting on the floor. I have hired top specialists from Europe. I have hired doctors with 3 degrees. They all try to hold him down or give him shots. You blew soap and water." Jenny shrugged one shoulder. "My grandma Ruth taught me." Robert narrowed his eyes. "Is your grandmother a doctor?" "No, sir," Jenny said. "She was a medic in the army. She flew in helicopters to get people out of bad places." Robert paused. "And what does that have to do with bubbles?" "Grandma said that when people are scared, their heads get too loud," Jenny explained. She spoke clearly, without fear. She said panic is like a siren in a small room. You can't shout over it. You have to open a window. The bubbles are the window. They give your eyes something slow to watch, so your heart remembers how to beat slow, too. Robert stared at her. The silence in the room stretched out. "Grandma Ruth," Robert repeated. "Where is she now?" "She passed away last winter," Linda said softly, stepping forward to protect her daughter. "She lived with us. She had a way with people." Robert looked at Linda, really seeing her for the first time. He saw the tired lines around her eyes, the worn fabric of her uniform. Then he looked back at Jenny. "My son, Billy," Robert started, then stopped. He cleared his throat. It was a rare sign of weakness for him. "Billy has been diagnosed with severe sensory overload. The doctors say he is difficult. They say he can't connect." "He connected with the bubble," Jenny said. "Yes," Robert said. "He did." He walked around the desk. He stopped in front of Linda. "I want you to bring her back," Robert said. Linda blinked. "Back? To the hotel? She usually stays with a neighbor, but today—" "No," Robert interrupted. "To my home. The estate outside the city." Linda took a step back. "Mr. Hayes, I clean rooms. We aren't babysitters." "I don't need a babysitter," Robert said sharply. "I have 5 of those. They are useless. He looked at Jenny again. "I need someone who knows how to open a window." "I can't," Linda said. "I have shifts. I have to work." "I will pay you double your current salary," Robert said. "For 3 hours, twice a week. You bring her to the house. She sits with Billy. That is all." "I'm 10, Jenny said. "I'm not a doctor." "You're better," Robert said. He looked at Jenny with an intensity that made Linda nervous. "You got him to speak." He whispered blue. "He hasn't spoken a word to me in 6 months." The pain in the man's voice was raw. It cut through the fancy suit and the cold office. It was the sound of a father who was out of options. Linda looked at Jenny. Jenny looked back, her blue eyes thoughtful. "Can I bring my drawing pad?" Jenny asked. Robert exhaled. "You can bring whatever you want." "Okay," Jenny said. She looked at her mom. "Mom, it's okay. Billy isn't scary. He's just loud because nobody listens." Linda hesitated. This was crossing a line. The staff manual said never get personal with the owners. But she remembered the look on the boy's face when the bubble popped. And she remembered the bills piled up on their kitchen table since Ruth died. "Okay," Linda whispered. "We'll try." Robert nodded once. Business concluded. But as they turned to leave, he spoke again. "What color were they?" Jenny paused at the heavy glass door. "The bubbles." "Yes. They were rainbow," Jenny said. "But you have to start with blue. Grandma said blue is the color of it's going to be okay." Robert looked down at his expensive leather shoes. I haven't felt blue in a long time. Then you should watch the bubbles, too, Jenny said. She opened the door and walked out, her backpack slung over one shoulder, leaving one of the richest men in the country standing in silence, wondering when exactly a 10-year-old girl had become the smartest person in the building. 2 days later, Linda's old sedan crunched up the gravel driveway of the Hayes estate. It wasn't a house, it was a fortress. High walls, iron gates, and a mansion that looked like a museum. It looks lonely, Jenny said from the back seat. It looks like a lot of windows to clean, Linda muttered, gripping the steering wheel. Remember, Jen, be polite. Don't touch anything unless you have to. And if the boy gets violent, you move away. Immediately. He won't, Jenny said. She was clutching her sketchbook. A butler opened the door. The inside was even colder than the office. Everything was white, gray, or black. Sharp edges. Glass tables. It was a house designed for a magazine, not for a child. Robert was waiting in the foyer. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just a stiff button-down shirt. He looked tired. He's in the playroom, Robert said, skipping the hello. The nanny is on standby, but I told her to stay in the hall. Where should I go? Linda asked. The kitchen, Robert said. Cook has tea. Linda nodded and walked away, looking back nervously at her daughter. Jenny stood alone in the giant hallway. This way, Robert said. He led her down a long corridor. They reached a door. Robert stopped. His hand hovered over the handle. He looked afraid. He had a bad morning, Robert admitted quietly. He threw his breakfast. He bit the doctor. Jenny looked up at the tall man. Did you yell at him? Robert stiffened. I tried to discipline him. He needs structure. Grandma Ruth said you can't build a house during an earthquake, Jenny said. You have to wait for the ground to stop shaking. Robert looked at her, his jaw tight. Then, he opened the door. The room was full of expensive toys. Electronic robots, educational screens, plastic towers. But Billy was in the corner, behind a heavy velvet curtain, hiding. Billy, Robert said, his voice commanding. We have a guest. No movement from the curtain. Jenny gently pushed past Robert. You can't talk to him from up there, she whispered to the father. You're too high up. You look like a giant. Jenny walked into the room. She didn't go to the curtain. She went to the middle of the rug. She sat down. She opened her sketchbook. She took out a box of crayons. She started to draw. She didn't say a word. Robert watched from the doorway, arms crossed. He wanted to intervene. He wanted to tell her to go over there and engage the boy. That's what he was paying for. Action. Results. But Jenny just drew. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound was rhythmic. Soft. 3 minutes passed. Robert checked his watch. This was a waste of time. Then, the curtain moved. A small face peeked out. Billy looked at the girl. He looked at the crayons. Jenny didn't look up. She just slid a single blue crayon across the rug. It rolled and stopped 3 feet from the curtain. It's a good blue, she said to the air. Like the ocean. Billy stared at the crayon. He took a step out. Then another. He crept toward the crayon like a shy animal. He picked it up. He looked at Jenny. Jenny kept drawing. Billy sat down. Not next to her, but close enough. He put the crayon to the paper. Robert, standing in the doorway, felt a lump form in his throat. He realized he was holding his breath. The drawing session lasted 20 minutes. To Robert Hayes, a man who measured his life in nanoseconds and stock ticks, it felt like a year. But it was the most peaceful year he had ever endured. He watched his son's hand. Billy gripped the blue crayon like a dagger at first, tight and white-knuckled. But as Jenny hummed, a low, wordless tune that sounded like wind through tall grass, Billy's grip loosened. He drew a jagged line, then a circle. Jenny didn't praise him. She didn't clap her hands like the therapists who used high-pitched voices that made Robert's teeth ache. She simply nodded and drew a fish next to his circle. He's lonely, Jenny whispered, pointing to the fish. Billy stopped. He looked at the fish. He looked at Jenny. Then, slowly, he picked up a green crayon. He drew a clumsy shape next to the fish. It looked like a rock, or maybe another fish. Now he has a friend, Billy said. His voice was rusty and used. Robert let out a breath that shuddered in his chest. He took a step forward, his expensive leather shoes squeaking on the hardwood. Billy flinched. The green crayon snapped in his hand. He pulled his knees up, hiding his face instantly. Don't, Jenny said sharply. She didn't look at Robert, but her command was aimed like an arrow at his chest. You broke the water. I just wanted to see. Robert defended himself. though he felt strangely small. You walked heavy, Ginny said, standing up. She brushed crayon wax off her jeans. Grandma Ruth said you have to walk like a deer in the woods. If you stomp, the birds fly away. She looked down at Billy. We have to go now, Billy. My mom has to cook dinner. Billy didn't look up, but his hand crept out and touched the edge of Ginny's sneaker. It was a plea. Stay? I'll come back, Ginny promised. Keep the fish safe. She walked to the door, past the billionaire who controlled half the city's real estate, and took her mother's hand. Linda looked pale, her eyes darting between her daughter and her boss, waiting to be fired. Same time Thursday, Robert said. His voice was devoid of its usual power. It sounded hollow. Linda nodded, too scared to speak. She pulled Ginny into the hallway. As they walked to the car, the heavy oak door clicked shut behind them. The silence of the estate was heavy, but inside the old sedan, Linda finally exhaled. Ginny, Linda said, starting the engine. You cannot speak to Mr. Hayes like that. He is a very important man. Ginny buckled her seatbelt. She looked out the window at the manicured gardens that looked too perfect to be real. He's just a dad, Mom. And he's scared. Grandma said fear makes people heavy-footed. They stomp because they don't know where the ground is. Linda sighed, merging onto the highway. Just be careful. We need the money. But more than that, we need to stay invisible. People like them, when they get tired of their new toys, they throw them away. The Thursday session began with a storm. Not outside, but inside. When Linda and Ginny arrived, the house was vibrating with tension. A vase lay shattered in the foyer. The staff looked terrified. Robert met them at the door. He looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was undone, his hair messy. He's in the closet, Robert said abruptly. He won't come out. The new doctor tried to force him to make eye contact. It didn't go well. Ginny frowned. Why did he do that? Because Billy needs to learn to function in the real world, Robert snapped, his patience fraying. He can't hide behind curtains and bubbles forever. I have board members coming next week. I need him to be presentable. Ginny stared at him. You want him to look fixed. I want him to be better, Robert corrected, though his eyes shifted away. Where is the closet? Ginny asked. Robert led them upstairs to Billy's bedroom. It was a massive room, filled with things a boy should love, yet it felt sterile. The walk-in closet door was shut tight. He's been in there for 2 hours, Robert said. I've tried bribing him. I've tried counting to 3. Nothing works. Ginny took off her backpack. She handed it to her mother. Do you have a flashlight? Ginny asked. Robert blinked. A flashlight? I suppose. In the emergency kit. Get it, Ginny said. Robert signaled to a maid, who scurried off and returned a minute later with a heavy tactical flashlight. Ginny took it. She walked to the closet door. She didn't knock. She sat down on the floor outside the door. She turned the flashlight on, aimed it at the ceiling, and began to make shadow puppets with her hands. A rabbit. A bird. A wolf. The wolf is hungry, Ginny said loudly to the closed door. But he can't find his pack. It's too dark in the woods. Silence from the closet. He thinks he's alone. Ginny continued, moving her fingers so the shadow wolf opened its mouth. But the moon is watching him. The moon isn't angry. The moon is just waiting. A small sound came from inside. A shuffle. Ginny kept the shadow wolf moving. The wolf is sad because his dad is a bear. And bears are loud. Bears roar when they are scared. Wolves just howl. Robert, standing by the bed, felt a sting behind his eyes. A bear. Was that what he was? A lumbering, roaring thing destroying the ecosystem of his own home? The closet door cracked open an inch. A sliver of darkness peered out. Ginny didn't look at the door. She looked at the shadow on the ceiling. Come out, wolf. The bear is sleeping. Robert stood perfectly still. He barely breathed. Billy crawled out. His face was streaked with tears, his nose running. He looked small and defeated. He crawled right past Ginny and curled up in the beam of the flashlight, bathing in the artificial light like it was a campfire. Ginny lowered her hands. The shadow wolf vanished. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. I made you a map, she whispered. Billy looked at the paper. He unfolded it with trembling fingers. It wasn't a map of the world. It was a drawing of the house. But instead of rooms, Ginny had labeled them with feelings. The kitchen was yellow, warm. The office was black, loud. The garden was green, safe. And the closet was blue. Deep water. Billy read the label on the closet. It's okay to go to deep water, Ginny said. But you can't live there. You turn into a fish if you stay too long. And you're a boy. Billy sniffled. He looked at his father. Robert wanted to rush forward. He wanted to scoop his son up and promise he'd never hire another doctor again. But he remembered Ginny's words. Walk like a deer. Robert took one slow step. He knelt on the expensive carpet. He didn't speak. He just waited. Billy looked at the map. Then he looked at Robert. He pointed to the black room on the drawing. The office. Loud, Billy whispered. I know, Robert said, his voice cracking. I'm sorry. I'll try to turn the volume down. Billy didn't smile, but his shoulders dropped 2 inches. The tension left his body. Ginny stood up. She looked at Robert. Her gaze was measuring, like a carpenter checking the strength of a beam. He needs to eat, Ginny said. But not at the big table. The big table is too far apart. A picnic? Robert asked, feeling ridiculous. Floor picnic, Ginny confirmed. In the yellow room. An hour later, the staff of the Hayes estate witnessed something they would gossip about for years. Robert Hayes, the billionaire, was sitting on the kitchen floor, eating a grilled cheese sandwich off a paper plate. Linda sat on a stool nearby, looking uncomfortable but relieved. Ginny and Billy sat cross-legged, trading apple slices. Robert watched them. He saw how Ginny guided Billy without touching him. She used her voice like a tether, keeping him grounded. My mother. Your grandmother, Robert said, wiping crumbs from his chin. You said she was a soldier? Ginny nodded, chewing. She was a medic. She said the hardest part wasn't the noise of the guns. It was the silence afterwards. That's when the soldiers got scared, because the silence meant they were alone with their thoughts. Robert nodded slowly. And how did she help them? She told them stories, Ginny said. She said stories are like ropes. You throw them to someone in a hole, and they can climb out. You're very wise for 10, Robert murmured. I'm not wise, Ginny said simply. I just listen. Most people talk so they don't have to hear the quiet. Billy likes the quiet. You just have to learn to like it too. Robert looked at his son. Billy was actually eating. He hadn't thrown a plate. He hadn't screamed. He looked content. A dangerous thought began to form in Robert's mind. A hope. He had a gala next week. The Hayes Foundation annual dinner. Every major investor, rival, and press outlet would be there. For years, rumors had circulated that his son was unstable, a liability to the family legacy. If he could bring Billy, if he could show them this calm, improved boy, it would silence the critics. It would prove the Hayes bloodline was strong. He looked at Ginny. She was the key. Ginny, Robert said, his voice taking on that smooth, negotiating tone he used in boardrooms. Next Saturday is a very special night. There is a party here. A quiet party. He lied quickly, seeing her frown. Music. Food. I was wondering if you would come. As a guest. And bring Billy. Linda stiffened on her stool. Mr. Hayes, a party? Crowds are his trigger. He's better, Robert insisted, gesturing to the calm boy. Look at him. He's fine. With Ginny there, he'll be fine. I need him to be there, Linda. It's important for the family image. Ginny stopped eating. She looked at Robert with a gaze that felt like it was x-raying his soul. You want to show him off, Ginny said. It wasn't a question. I want to include him, Robert corrected. He's my son. He shouldn't be hidden. If he gets scared, we leave, Ginny said. Immediately. No goodbyes. No pictures. Agreed, Robert said too quickly. I promise. Ginny looked at Billy, who was oblivious, stacking apple slices into a tower. She looked back at Robert. She didn't trust him. She could see the hunger in his eyes, not for food, but for validation. He wanted his son to be a trophy, not a boy. But she also saw the desperation. He loved his son, but he loved his reputation too. They were fighting inside him. Okay, Ginny said, but I'm not wearing a dress. Grandma Ruth said never wear clothes you can't run in. Robert smiled, a genuine, victorious smile. Wear whatever you want, Ginny. Just bring your bubbles. As Linda and Ginny left that evening, the air outside felt different. Heavier. I have a bad feeling, Linda whispered as they drove through the iron gates. He's rushing it. He sees what he wants to see. I know, Ginny said, staring at her sketchbook in the dark car. She had drawn the shadow wolf again. But this time, the wolf was surrounded by hundreds of eyes. Mom. Yeah, baby. If the bear roars at the party, Ginny whispered. We have to be the ones to protect the wolf. Linda reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. We will. I promise. But promises, as Ginny knew from her grandmother's stories, were easy to make in the quiet. They were much harder to keep when the noise started. And the noise was coming. The ballroom of the Hayes Hotel was not a room. It was a mouth. Gold leaf teeth lined the ceiling in the form of massive chandeliers. The red carpet was a tongue, waiting to swallow anyone who tripped. And the noise, the clinking of crystal, the roar of 100 conversations, the swell of a string quartet, was the breath of a beast. Jenny stood at the edge of the carpet. She wore her Sunday church dress, a simple blue cotton that looked dull next to the silk and diamonds swirling around her. She gripped her yellow bottle of bubbles like a grenade. Next to her, Billy looked like a miniature waiter. His tuxedo was stiff. His bow tie was crooked. He was holding his father's hand so tight his knuckles were white. "Smile, William," Robert whispered. He wasn't looking at his son. He was scanning the room, looking for investors, for cameras, for approval. "Stand up straight." Billy didn't smile. He was vibrating. A low hum started in his throat, the engine of a panic attack revving up. "Mr. Hayes," Linda said, stepping closer. She was wearing her best black slacks and a white blouse, trying to blend in with the staff. "It's too loud. We should take him to the side room now." "Nonsense," Robert said, his voice tight. "We just got here. The board members are by the stage. We have to say hello. It will take 5 minutes." 5 minutes is a long time underwater," Jenny said. Robert ignored her. He pulled Billy forward. "Come on, son. Show them you can do it." They walked into the crush of people. To Robert, this was his kingdom. To Billy, it was a war zone. Every perfume scent was a chemical attack. Every laugh was a shriek. Billy squeezed his eyes shut. He stumbled. "Watch it." A woman with a champagne flute snapped, then saw Robert. Her face instantly changed to a plastic smile. "Oh, Robert. And this must be the little one." She looked at Billy like he was a broken exhibit in a museum. "This is William," Robert announced proudly. "He's doing much better." "Is he?" the woman asked, arching a brow. "He looks intense." "He's focused," Robert lied. He nudged Billy. "Say hello to Mrs. Vanderbilt, Billy." Billy didn't speak. He was rocking on his heels. The hum in his throat was getting louder. Jenny moved. She didn't ask permission. She stepped between the woman and Billy. She acted as a human shield. "He can't say hello right now," Jenny said clearly. "He's busy holding the floor down." Mrs. Vanderbilt blinked. "Excuse me. If he lets go, he might float away," Jenny explained earnestly. "Gravity is slippery in here." The woman laughed, a sharp, unkind sound. "What a quaint imagination. Is this the nanny's child, Robert?" Robert's face reddened. He felt the judgment of the room. He felt the cracks in his perfect image. "She's the companion." "Billy, stop rocking. Stand still." He gave Billy's hand a sharp tug. That was the spark. Billy yanked his hand back. He opened his eyes, and they were wild with terror. The room tilted. The lights flared. The bear was roaring, and his father had just let go of the rope. Billy screamed. It wasn't the scream from the lobby. This was worse. This was a high-pitched, shattering wail of betrayal. He dropped to the floor. He began to slam his hands against the expensive carpet. He kicked out, knocking over a waiter passing with a tray of drinks. Glass shattered. Champagne soaked the hem of Mrs. Vanderbilt's gown. The music stopped. The conversation died. Hundreds of eyes turned to them. "Stop it," Robert hissed, dropping to his knees. He wasn't comforting his son. He was trying to restrain him. He grabbed Billy's wrists. "William, stop this instant. Everyone is looking." Billy thrashed harder, hitting his father in the chest. "No, no. Too loud. Too loud. Get him up." Robert yelled at Linda. "Get him out of here." Linda rushed forward, but she was crying, panicked. She reached for Billy, but he was a whirlwind of limbs. Then, a bubble floated past Robert's angry face. Then another. Jenny was standing on a chair. She had climbed up to get above the sea of tuxedos. She was blowing bubbles over the heads of the stunned crowd. "Look up, Billy," she shouted. Her voice wasn't soft this time. It was a command. "Count them. 1, 2. The crowd gasped. A girl in a cotton dress, standing on a velvet chair, blowing soap at a billionaire. Billy heard her voice. He stopped kicking. He looked up through his tears. He saw the bubbles drifting toward the chandeliers. "Red," Billy choked out. The lights reflected in the soap made them look red. "Catch the red one," Jenny commanded. "Don't let it touch the ground." Billy scrambled on his hands and knees. He ignored his father. He ignored the spilled champagne. He crawled after the bubble. "This is ridiculous," A board member muttered nearby. The boy is deranged. Robert heard it. The shame burned through him like acid. He stood up, brushing wet dirt from his knees. He saw his son crawling on the floor like an animal. He saw the guests whispering. He saw the camera phones raised, recording the spectacle. He snapped. He didn't grab Billy. He grabbed the bubble wand from Ginny's hand. Enough, Robert roared. He threw the yellow bottle across the room. It hit a wall and cracked, spilling soapy water onto the pristine floor. The room went dead silent. Ginny froze on the chair. She looked at the broken bottle. Then she looked at Robert. Her eyes weren't scared anymore. They were disappointed. You broke the window, Ginny whispered. Billy stared at the spot where the bubbles had stopped. He looked at his father, really looked at him. He didn't scream. He just went completely still. His face shut down. The light behind his eyes vanished. He retreated so deep inside himself that he wasn't there anymore. Take him home, Robert said. His voice was shaking, but he refused to look at his son. He fixed his tie, turning his back on them to face the crowd. Linda, take them both. Get them out of my sight. Mr. Hayes, Linda started, her voice trembling with anger. Now, Robert barked. Before he humiliates me further. Linda grabbed Jenny off the chair. She scooped up Billy, who was now limp as a rag doll. She didn't look at her boss. She walked out of the ballroom, her heels clicking a furious rhythm, carrying the broken boy and her daughter away from the gold-toothed mouth of the hotel. The drive back to the estate was silent. Not a peaceful silence. A dead silence. When they arrived, the house was dark. Linda took Billy up to his room. She tucked him in. He didn't move. He lay staring at the ceiling, catatonic. Ginny sat on the floor of the hallway, knees pulled to her chest. Linda came out of the room and closed the door softly. She slid down the wall and sat next to her daughter. She put her head in her hands and wept. I'm sorry, baby, Linda sobbed. I should have stopped it. I shouldn't have let him take us there. He's a bear, Ginny said quietly. He doesn't know he's hurting people. He just knows he's big. We're done. Linda wiped her eyes. We're not coming back. I'll find another job. I can't. I can't watch him treat his son like a prop. We can't leave Billy, Ginny said. We have to, Linda said firmly. Mr. Hayes fired us, Ginny. Effectively. And even if he didn't, I won't expose you to that man's temper. The front door slammed downstairs. Heavy footsteps echoed on the marble. Robert was home. He didn't come upstairs. He went straight to his office. The sound of glass shattering, a tumbler of scotch thrown against a wall, echoed up the ventilation shafts. Ginny stood up. Ginny, no, Linda warned, grabbing her daughter's arm. I have to get my sketchbook, Ginny lied. I left it in the library. I'll get it, Linda said. No, Ginny said. She pulled her arm free. Grandma Ruth said you don't run from the battlefield until everyone is accounted for. Billy is still on the field. Before Linda could stop her, Ginny ran down the stairs. She didn't go to the library. She walked straight to the office. The door was open. Robert was sitting behind his desk, head in his hands. His tuxedo jacket was on the floor. He looked wrecked. A man who had everything, and had just realized he had nothing. Ginny walked in. She didn't knock. Robert looked up. His eyes were red. I told your mother to take you home. We are going, Ginny said. But you forgot something. I forgot nothing, Robert spat. I gave him everything. Best doctors. Best schools. And he crawls on the floor. He was crawling to the light, Ginny said. You were the one standing in the dark. Robert laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. You think you know everything because you blew some bubbles? You're a child. You don't know what it's like. The pressure. The expectations. I have a legacy to uphold. Billy is your legacy, Ginny said. Not the hotel. Robert slammed his hand on the desk. He is broken. I have tried to fix him for 5 years. He isn't broken, Ginny shouted back. Her voice cracked, finally showing the child beneath the wisdom. He's just loud inside. And you keep adding more noise. She reached into her pocket. She pulled out the drawing she had made. The map of the house. She walked forward and slammed it onto the mahogany desk. He made this, Ginny said. Look at it. Robert looked down. He saw the blue closet, the yellow kitchen, and the black office. He drew this room black, Ginny said. Do you know why? Robert didn't answer. Because this is where the monster lives, Ginny said. Not a monster under the bed. The monster who thinks being perfect is more important than being happy. She turned to leave. Wait, Robert whispered. Ginny stopped, her hand on the doorframe. He drew me as a monster? No, Ginny said softly, looking back. He didn't draw you at all. You aren't in the picture, Robert. That's the problem. She left him alone in the silence of his black room. The next morning, the sun rose over the city, indifferent to the disasters of the night before. Linda and Ginny were in their small apartment. Linda was circling ads in the newspaper, eyes puffy. Ginny was packing her backpack for school. There was a knock on the door. Linda froze. If that's the landlord. She walked to the door and opened it. It wasn't the landlord. It was Robert Hayes. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a sweater. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He held a cardboard box in his hands. Mrs. Miller, Robert said. He didn't call her Linda. He used her name with respect. Mr. Hayes, Linda said, blocking the doorway. We don't want trouble. We'll pick up my final check next week. I didn't come to fire you, Robert said. I came to return something. He held out the box. Linda hesitated, then took it. She opened the lid. Inside were bottles. Dozens of them. Yellow, blue, pink. Bubble solution. Enough to fill a swimming pool. I bought every bottle in the city, Robert said. His voice was quiet. Humble. I don't know how to use them. Not really. He looked past Linda, into the small, cramped apartment. He saw Ginny standing by the kitchen table. I tried this morning, Robert confessed to the girl. I sat on the floor. I tried to blow them, but my hands were shaking too much. Ginny walked to the door. She looked at the billionaire in her doorway. Why were your hands shaking? Ginny asked. Because I was scared, Robert admitted. Tears welled in his eyes. I'm scared I've lost him. I went into his room. He won't look at me. He won't eat. He's just gone. He dropped to his knees right there in the hallway of the tenement building. The powerful CEO, kneeling on the dirty linoleum. Please, Robert whispered. I don't need a maid. I don't need a companion. I need a teacher. Teach me how to stop the noise. Ginny looked at her mother. Linda looked at Robert, seeing the total surrender in the man. Ginny stepped out into the hall. She reached into the box and took out a single yellow bottle. Stand up, Ginny said. Robert stood up, wiping his face. We don't start with bubbles, Ginny said. We start with the shoes. The shoes? Robert asked. Take them off, Ginny said. You can't walk like a deer in Italian leather. Robert looked down at his feet. Then, without a word of protest, he kicked off his expensive loafers. He stood in his socks. Okay, Ginny said, taking his hand. It was a small hand in a large one, but her grip was the stronger one. Now we go back. But this time, we enter through the kitchen. The yellow room. Why? Robert asked. Because, Ginny said, leading him toward his car. You're hungry, and you can't fix a heart on an empty stomach. The kitchen staff of the Hayes estate had seen many things. They had seen foreign dignitaries drunk on vintage wine. They had seen chefs fired for undercooking a steak by 10 seconds. But they had never seen Robert Hayes, the owner of the empire, standing in his socks, asking where the frying pan was. Sir, the head chef asked, his toque nearly falling off in shock. I can prepare a souffle. Or a poached. No, Robert said. He looked down at his socks. He wiggled his toes on the cold tile. It felt grounding. I need bread. And cheese. And butter. He looked at Linda. And instructions. Linda stepped forward. She took off her coat. She didn't ask for an apron. She walked to the giant industrial stove like she owned it. Low heat, Linda instructed, her voice steady. Butter the bread, not the pan. And patience. If you rush it, you burn it. Like everything else, Robert murmured. For 20 minutes, the billionaire learned to make a grilled cheese sandwich. He burned his thumb. He dropped a slice of cheddar. But he didn't yell. He didn't check his phone. He focused on the golden crust forming on the bread with the same intensity he usually saved for mergers. Ginny sat on the counter, swinging her legs. She watched him. She was grading him. It's crooked, she noted. It's rustic, Robert countered, a small smile touching his lips. It felt strange to smile. His face muscles weren't used to it. When the sandwiches were done, Robert put them on paper plates. He didn't ask the maids to carry them. He picked up 2 plates. Where is he? Robert asked. The library, the nanny whispered from the doorway. He's under the main desk. He has the scissors. Robert froze. The old fear spiked. Scissors. Danger. Liability. He looked at Jenny. He's making snowflakes, Jenny said calmly. It's winter in his head. He needs snow. Robert exhaled. He nodded. Snowflakes. Okay. He walked out of the kitchen, patting softly in his socks across the expensive Persian rugs. Linda and Jenny followed a few paces behind, like a rear guard. The library was dark. The heavy curtains were drawn. Under the massive oak desk, a fortress had been built. Books were stacked as walls. Robert approached the desk. He didn't knock on the wood. He didn't call out his son's name. He sat down on the floor. He slid the paper plate across the carpet until it touched the wall of books. Room service, Robert whispered. Silence from the fort. Then, the sound of paper cutting stopped. It's rustic, Robert added. That means I made it wrong, but it still tastes good. A hand reached out. It wasn't fearful this time. It was curious. Billy dragged the plate into the darkness. Robert waited. He watched the dust motes dancing in a sliver of light from the window. He realized he hadn't looked at dust motes in 40 years. I have a bottle, Robert said to the air. But I don't know how to work it. The manual is missing. Billy crawled out. He was holding the scissors, but he held them by the blades, offering the handle. A peace offering. Or maybe a tool. He looked at his father. Really looked at him. He saw the socks. He saw the butter stain on Robert's shirt. He saw the man, not the suit. You have to breathe, Billy whispered. Robert's heart hammered. I am breathing. No, Billy said. He put the scissors down. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the yellow bottle Robert had bought. He unscrewed the cap. You breathe out. You have to give your air to the bubble. Robert took the wand. His hands were shaking again. He dipped it. He brought it to his lips. He thought about the board meeting he was missing. He thought about the stocks dropping. He thought about the whispering guests. Then he looked at Billy's eyes. They were blue. A deep, waiting blue. Robert blew. A single, wobbling bubble drifted out. It wasn't perfect. It was lopsided. It floated between them, catching the dim light. Billy didn't pop it. He watched it rise. It's heavy, Billy said. Why? Robert asked. Because it has your worries inside, Billy said seriously. But they float away. The bubble hit the ceiling and popped. Gone. Robert felt a weight lift off his chest that he hadn't realized was crushing him. He slumped against the desk. A laugh bubbled up in his throat. A wet, choked sound. I'm sorry, Billy, Robert said. He didn't look at the boy. He looked at the wet spot on the ceiling. I wanted you to be like me. But I don't even like me. Billy scooted closer. He leaned his head against Robert's shoulder. It was a light touch, barely there, but it anchored Robert to the earth. I like you, Billy whispered. When you're quiet. Linda stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She reached for Jenny's hand, squeezing it tight. You did it, Linda whispered to her daughter. You fixed it. Jenny shook her head. She pulled her hand away gently and opened her sketchbook. She turned to the back page. I didn't fix anything, Mom, Jenny said. Her voice was old again, carrying the weight of Grandma Ruth's war stories. The radio wasn't broken. It was just tuned to the wrong station. An hour later, the dynamic of the house had shifted permanently. The bear was no longer roaring. The bear was eating a grilled cheese sandwich on the floor. Robert looked up at Linda. I meant what I said. About the job. Linda stiffened. Mr. Hayes, I appreciate the offer, but I can't be a nanny. I have my own daughter to raise. I don't want a nanny, Robert said. He wiped his mouth with a napkin. I fired my personal assistant this morning. The one who told me to send you away. Linda blinked. Okay. I need someone who understands that people are not assets, Robert said. I need someone who can tell me when I'm walking heavy. I want you to run the house. Not clean it. Run it. Manage the staff. Manage the schedule. And most importantly, manage me. He looked at Jenny. And the consultant fee for your daughter will be substantial. In the form of a scholarship. Any school. Any college. Forever. Linda looked at the room. It was still a cold museum of a house, but it felt warmer now. The ice had cracked. I have conditions, Linda said, finding her voice. Name them, Robert said immediately. No more galas for Billy until he asks for them, Linda said. And Jenny comes with me. She does her homework here. But she isn't an employee. She's a child. Agreed, Robert said. And, Linda added, a small smile appearing, you have to learn to cook something other than cheese. Robert laughed. We can work on that. He turned to Jenny. One question. Before we sign the treaty. Jenny looked up from her drawing. Yes. The magic water, Robert said. He picked up the yellow bottle. What is in it? I need to order more. Is it a special chemical? A sedative mix. Jenny looked at the bottle. Then she looked at Robert with a pitying smile. It's dish soap, Robert, she said. From the dollar store. And tap water. Robert stared at the bottle. Soap. The magic isn't in the bottle, Ginny said, tapping her own chest. The magic is that you have to stop screaming to use it. You can't blow a bubble while you're yelling. Grandma Ruth said the bubble is just a trick to make you hold your breath. Robert looked at the cheap plastic wand. He looked at the billions of dollars of art on his walls, the statues, the legacy, all of it useless against the panic. And here, a 10-cent mixture of soap had saved his family. He realized then that he had spent his life building a fortress to keep the world out, when all he really needed was something fragile to let the world in. Dish soap, Robert whispered. He started to laugh again, a free, unburdened sound. Of course. 6 months later, the lobby of the Hayes Hotel was busy. A delegation from Tokyo was checking in. Phones were ringing. In the center of the lobby, the spot where the boy had once screamed was empty. But on the mezzanine level, looking down, stood 2 figures. Robert Hayes wore a suit, but his tie was loose. Beside him stood Billy. Billy wasn't hiding. He was wearing noise-canceling headphones, but he was watching the people. He held a small sketchbook. Too fast, Billy said, pointing at a bellhop running with bags. I'll tell him to slow down, Robert said, making a note on his phone. Good catch. And him? Billy pointed to a manager yelling at a maid. Red face. Loud. Unacceptable, Robert agreed. I'll handle it. They were a team now. The sensory consultant and the CEO. Billy saw the friction points that Robert was too busy to notice. Linda walked up behind them, holding a clipboard. She looked sharp, confident. Board meeting in 10 minutes, Robert. Jenny is in the break room teaching the staff how to open windows. Thank you, Linda, Robert said. He turned to go, but Billy tugged his sleeve. Dad, Billy said. Yes, son. Look. Billy pointed down to the lobby floor. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, was crying. She had dropped her ice cream. Her mother was dragging her by the arm, stressed and angry. The girl was wailing, that breathless, panicked sound that Robert knew too well. Robert froze. The old instinct was to call security, to remove the disturbance. But he felt the weight of the yellow bottle in his suit pocket. He never went to a meeting without it. He looked at Billy. Billy nodded. Go, Billy said. She's drowning. Robert Hayes, billionaire, took the stairs 2 at a time. He didn't run. He walked with a steady, rhythmic pace, like a deer in the woods. He reached the crying girl. The mother looked up, terrified to see the owner. I'm so sorry, Mr. Hayes, the mother cried. She's just... It's okay, Robert said softly. He knelt down on the marble. His expensive suit trousers touched the floor. He didn't care. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the yellow bottle. Hey, Robert whispered to the crying girl. She hiccuped, looking at him with wide, wet eyes. It's loud in here, isn't it? Robert asked. The girl nodded. I know a trick, Robert said. But I need help. My hands shake sometimes. He held out the wand. Can you help me make a window? The girl reached out. The lobby went silent. The staff watched. Linda watched from the balcony, smiling. Robert took a deep breath. He blew. 1 bubble. Shimmering, fragile, and perfect. It floated up, past the angry mother, past the security guards, rising toward the glass ceiling. Blue. The little girl whispered, her tears stopping. Yes, Robert said, watching the bubble rise. Blue means the sky is open. He watched it float higher, carrying the silence with it, a tiny sphere of peace in a chaotic world. He knew it would pop. They always did. But that was okay. He had plenty of soap. And we'll leave them there, watching that single bubble rise toward the glass ceiling. Just as Jenny created a moment of silence in that chaotic lobby. I hope this story gave you a brief window of peace in your own day. I'd love to know where you found your quiet moment while listening. Maybe you're driving home, folding laundry, or just taking a deep breath like Robert finally did. Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If you want to catch the next chapter of our journey, hitting like and subscribe makes all the difference. We're always refining our storytelling, so please share your feedback below. Thanks for watching.